What if the moment that changed a man's whole life wasn't a gunfight or a storm, but a woman standing in a creek, unaware he was watching? The Arizona sun hung like a brass coin in the white sky, burning the land until it cracked like old pottery. Jonah Hail stood beside Dry Willow Creek, watching his cattle fight over what little water remained. The creek wasn't a creek anymore, just a thin ribbon of muddy water, barely enough to wet a thirsty tongue. His cattle pushed in close, ribs showing, hooves sinking into the mud as they tried to drink. Jonah counted the herd. 43. There should have been 45. 2 missing, probably lying somewhere out in the desert, too weak to make it home. Every inch of this land was teaching him how unforgiving nature could be. One more week of drought, and he'd be hauling water from town at prices that would bury him in debt. His gelding, Moses, drank gently from the edge of the creek. Jonah kept running the numbers in his head, all of them bad, until the sharp crack of gunfire cut through the stillness. 3 shots, then 2 more. Not hunting shots, not warning shots, fighting shots. Before he realized it, Jonah was already in the saddle, moving toward the sound. 8 years had passed since the war, but his body still reacted like a soldier's. He kept Moses in the shadows of tall red boulders, staying out of open ground. The war had taught him one rule better than any other. The first man seen was the first man shot. As he rounded a bend, the scene below made him pull Moses up short. A freight wagon sat crooked in the road, one wheel sunk deep into a wash. 2 guards lay motionless in the dust. A woman crouched behind the wagon, a Spencer carbine shaking in her hands. She was trying to reload, but cartridges kept slipping from her trembling fingers. Her navy traveling dress, once neat, was torn and dusty. Dark hair spilled from beneath her bonnet. 3 riders circled the wagon like wolves, circling wounded prey. Their bandanas hid most of their faces, but Jonah knew their kind. Regulators who worked for whoever paid the most, men with no loyalty but money. "Come on out, little bird," one called, his voice lazy but dangerous. "Mr. Kincaid just wants to talk. You've got something that belongs to him." The woman fired through the wagon wheels. The shot hit only dust. That was her last round. Jonah had counted only 5 shots. She thought she'd fired 6. Fear could make fingers lie. One rider kicked his horse into a charge. Jonah drew and fired in the same motion. His shot hit the rider in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him fleeing. The other 2 riders snapped their attention toward him. "Ride on," Jonah called from behind cover. "This ain't your fight anymore." "Like hell," the wounded rider shouted, clutching his arm. "I said ride on." The leader hesitated. 3 against 1, but their surprise was gone, 1 man wounded, and they'd lost sight of the woman. Jonah could almost see the math turning in the leader's head. "This ain't over," he finally said. "Mr. Kincaid has a long memory." "So do I." They rode off, a trail of dust marking their retreat. Jonah waited until their dust settled before stepping out. The woman sat against the wagon wheel, the Spencer still locked in a white-knuckled grip. Up close, he saw she was younger than he expected, late 20s, maybe. Pretty, not in a polished way, but in a strong, determined way, a way that said she'd already survived more than most. "You hurt?" Jonah asked. She shook her head, though he noticed a patch of blood on her collar. "It's not mine," she said. "The guards tried to protect me." Jonah checked the bodies. Both guards were dead. Clean shots, professional work. "These men work for you?" he asked. "For the freight company. I hired them in Tucson to see me safely to Prescott. I should have hired more." Her voice steadied as shock settled. He noticed a leather satchel half buried in the dust beside her. She kept touching it like it held her whole life. "They take your money?" he asked. There wasn't any money. That strongbox was a decoy. That meant they were after her or the satchel. "I suppose I should thank you for your help, Mr. Hail, Jonah Hail. I've got a ranch 2 miles west." Quote, she straightened her bonnet, trying to regain dignity. "I'm Sarah Moore, recently widowed, traveling to Prescott to settle my late husband's affairs." It was a smooth lie, too smooth. Jonah had learned to read people the same way he read tracks in the dust. Her thumb rubbed at her wrist. a red mark shaped like fresh rope burn. She handled that Spencer like someone who'd been around guns before. And her eyes, they kept calculating everything around her, including him. "Well, Mrs. Moore," Jonah said softly, "you can't stay here. Those men might come back. I don't want to impose. Ma'am, you've got a broken wagon, 2 dead men, and trouble on your heels. Night's coming fast. Either you take my help, or you wait for them to return." She hesitated only a moment. "I suppose I have little choice." Jonah helped her gather what she could carry. She clung to the satchel like it held her heartbeat. "Can you ride?" he asked as he mounted Moses. "Yes." She climbed up behind him, one arm around his waist, the other clutching that satchel tight. He felt the tension in her body. She sat like someone ready to jump and run at any second. They rode toward Willow Bend Ranch as the sun fell behind the rocky horizon. He took the long route, cutting through washes to avoid open ground. She didn't question him once. "Do you live alone?" she finally asked. "Just me. No wife." "Some of us are better off alone," she murmured. Jonah wasn't sure if she was talking about herself or warning him. By the time they reached his ranch, shadows stretched long across the valley. The adobe house wasn't much, but it was safe, and safe was something she needed. "It's not fancy," Jonah said. "It's perfect." There was something in her voice, relief maybe, or the sound of someone who hadn't felt safe in a long time. He helped her down, noticing how she swayed. Exhaustion was setting in. "There's a small room off the kitchen. You can rest there." "Thank you." She paused in the doorway. "Why did you help me?" Jonah thought about it. 3 men with guns against 1 woman with an empty Spencer didn't seem like fair odds. "Most men would have ridden on," she said. "Most men are smarter than me." For the first time, a tiny smile touched her lips. "I don't think that's true." Jonah watched her disappear into the small room. Outside, the coyotes cried across the desert. Somewhere in the dark, men were saddling horses, preparing to hunt. And Jonah knew one thing for certain. He had just brought a storm into his home. What if the woman he rescued wasn't running from danger, but carrying danger right into his life? The next morning broke hot and pale, the kind of Arizona dawn that made even the shadows look thirsty. Jonah saddled Moses in silence, feeling the weight of a choice he hadn't meant to make. The woman he'd brought home, Sarah, or whatever her real name was, had slept in the small pantry room, doors locked, satchel tucked under her pillow like a loaded gun. He didn't know who she really was, but he knew men would come. And soon. As he cinched the saddle, Jonah sensed movement behind him. Sarah stood in the barn doorway, her hair loose, falling around her shoulders in dark waves. She wore one of his mother's old shirts tucked into a skirt he'd found in a trunk. The clothes didn't fit perfectly, but something about her made even old fabric look graceful. "I heard you moving around," she said quietly. "I thought you might be leaving." "Only into town," Jonah replied. "Need to hear what folks are saying. Need to know how close those men are." Her fingers tightened on the satchel strap. "They'll come. Kincaid won't stop until he gets what he wants." "Mind telling me what that is?" Jonah asked. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Her eyes met his, tired, guarded, but honest enough to crack the lie she'd been carrying. "My name isn't Sarah Moore," she whispered. "It's Lark McKenna. My husband was Charles McKenna, a bookkeeper in Tucson." Jonah said nothing. He let her speak. "Charles discovered something. Illegal water transfers, bribes to judges. Fraudulent land deeds. He kept records, detailed ones, names, dates, transactions. And when he threatened to take it to the federal authorities," Jonah finished for her, "they killed him." She nodded. "They made it look like a riding accident. They planned to do the same to me. They tied me up and searched our home for the ledger. But I escaped. The guards I hired in Tucson were the only ones willing to help me reach Prescott with the evidence. And they died for it," Jonah said softly. Her eyes dropped. "Yes." Jonah exhaled through his nose, slow and heavy. The truth wasn't simple. It never was. "And this ledger," he began. She nodded, lifting the satchel. Everything Kincaid has done. Every lie, every theft, every murder hidden behind paperwork. That's why they're hunting you. That's why they'll never stop. For a moment, the barn was still, except for the soft shifting of Moses in his stall. Jonah should have sent her away. He should have told her that her war wasn't his. He'd fought his share of battles, lost men he loved, including a brother who'd believed justice had a place in the world. But Jonah had spent 8 years trying to forget that belief. Now the truth stared at him in the form of a woman whose courage was stronger than her fear. "You can stay," he said finally, "for now, but we need to move careful." Relief washed over her face, softening the tension she'd worn like armor since yesterday. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonah mounted Moses. "Lock the doors. Keep the rifle nearby. I'll be back before sundown." She stepped back, watching him ride out toward town. But Jonah had barely ridden a mile before dust plumed on the horizon. Riders, 3 at least, crossing the valley fast. Kincaid's men. Jonah detoured immediately, circling to higher ground and keeping himself hidden among boulders. He watched as the riders reached Willow Bend Ranch, saw one dismount, saw them stalk toward his house. His stomach tightened. Lark was inside. He kicked Moses hard and rode down a back arroyo, keeping low as he approached the ranch. By the time he got within rifle range, the men were at his front door. One pounded on it, the second circled around back, the third searched the barn. Jonah slipped off the horse, shouldered his Winchester, and took cover behind a mesquite tree. He waited until the man nearest the barn stepped into the open. One shot! Down! The second man spun, firing blindly toward the sound. Jonah ducked behind the tree as bullets thudded into the trunk, bark spraying. Inside the house, he heard the back door slam. A man shouting. Lark screamed. Short, sharp, furious. Jonah's vision went cold. He fired again, hitting the second man in the leg. The man dropped, howling and clutching his thigh. The third man dragged Lark out by the arm, pressing a revolver to her temple. "Drop it!" he shouted. "Or she dies!" Lark struggled, but the man's grip was tight. Jonah steadied his rifle. The man dragged her toward a horse, eyes wide and panicked. "You shoot me, she dies!" Jonah lowered the rifle slightly, letting the man think he'd won. Then he looked at Lark. Her eyes flicked downward. At his belt, his revolver. With one smooth motion, Jonah holstered the rifle and drew his Colt in a blur. One shot rang across the valley. The man's gun fell from his hand. He collapsed, arm hanging useless, a clean shot through the shoulder. Lark stumbled free. Jonah ran to her. "You all right?" She nodded shakily. You didn't miss." "I wasn't planning to." She stared at him, breath trembling. "You shouldn't be risking your life for me." Jonah looked at her, really looked at her. "I reckon some things are worth the risk." Before she could answer, the wounded man on the ground spit blood and snarled. "You think this is over? You don't know who you crossed. Kincaid will bury you. He'll burn your ranch. Jonah stepped close, voice low and dangerous. "Tell Kincaid if he wants her. He'll have to come through me." The man's face went pale. Jonah dragged him and the others away from the house, tied them to their horses, slapped the horses, flanks, and sent them limping back toward town. Lark stood on the porch, shaken but unbroken. "They'll be back," she whispered. "I know," Jonah said, "which is why we're leaving." "Leaving? To where?" "Salvation Ridge," he said. "We find someone who can help, someone who still believes in truth." Lark clutched the satchel to her chest. "Then let's ride." Quote, Jonah glanced back at his ranch, his home. But there was no choice now. As they mounted up, the wind shifted, carrying dust and danger across the valley. Kincaid's hunt had begun. What if running for your life forced you to face the one truth you'd been avoiding, the truth about who you really needed? Jonah and Lark rode hard through the Arizona backcountry, pushing the horses until the land bled from hard rock to thin desert grass. The sun dropped low behind the mesas, turning the world red and gold. Jonah kept glancing behind them, watching for dust clouds that would mean Kincaid's men were closing in. They rode without speaking for almost an hour. Only when the first flicker of lanterns from Salvation Ridge appeared did Lark finally speak. "You don't have to do this," she said. "You don't owe me anything." Jonah didn't slow his horse. "I owe myself something." "What's that?" "A reason to stop running from my own ghosts." Lark looked down at the satchel in her lap, the ledger that men were willing to kill for. "Charles used to say truth was like water," she murmured. "You can dam it up, but sooner or later it'll break through." Jonah nodded. "Then let's break something." They reached Salvation Ridge under the cover of dusk, tying their horses behind the old adobe church. The town looked peaceful at first glance, but Jonah saw danger in the shadows. The wrong men watching from porches, the wrong silence resting over the main street. Lark held the satchel tight against her chest. "You sure we can trust the priest you mentioned?" she whispered. "He's honest," Jonah said. "And honest men are the rarest thing in these parts." They slipped through the rear door of the church. Father Miguel looked up from lighting a candle, relief flooding his face. "You made it," he said softly. "I prayed you would. Come, quickly." He ushered them into a small room behind the choir stalls. Once the door was shut, Lark opened the satchel and placed the wrapped ledger on the table. Father Miguel touched it gently, as if it were something sacred. "This," he whispered, "is enough to bring down half the corrupt men in Arizona territory." Quote, "And make us targets the rest of our lives," Jonah said. The priest nodded. "Which means we must be careful." Before he finished the sentence, the church bell rang, a sharp, unnatural clang. Jonah's head snapped up. "That's not a call to worship," he said. "That's a warning." Boots thundered outside. Voices shouted orders. Someone pounded on the church's front doors. "Father Miguel," a menacing voice bellowed, "hand over the woman and the ledger." Lark looked at Jonah, fear climbing her spine. "They found us." Jonah grabbed his rifle. "Get behind the altar." "No time for that," the priest said. "Follow me." He threw open a trapdoor behind the choir stall. A ladder led down into a narrow crawl space carved into the church's old foundation. "Go," he ordered. Lark descended first, clutching the ledger. Jonah followed, dropping into the dark passage just as bullets shattered stained glass windows above. The trapdoor slammed shut. Darkness swallowed them. "Where does this go?" Lark whispered. "To the old mission tunnels," Father Miguel answered. "They built them for hiding people during Apache raids. Now we hide from worse." Jonah grabbed Lark's hand as they moved through the narrow stone corridor. Dust choked the air. Above them, footsteps pounded through the church. Men shouted. Furniture crashed. "They won't find the trapdoor easily," Miguel whispered. "But they will set the church on fire if they become desperate." "They're already desperate," Jonah said. The tunnel branched. Miguel led them into another passage that sloped upward. After several minutes, faint light appeared ahead. They emerged behind a cluster of mesquite trees on a hill overlooking the town. From here, Jonah saw the truth. Dozens of riders filled Salvation Ridge, Kincaid's army. They were searching buildings, dragging out frightened townsfolk, tearing apart anything that might hide a ledger or a woman brave enough to carry it. Lark's breath trembled. "This is because of me." "No," Jonah said firmly. "This is because men like Kincaid think they own the world." Miguel pointed to a path leading into the hills. "There's an abandoned mining camp 3 miles north, Shepherd's Rest. You'll be safe there for the night. I'll go back, try to calm the townspeople." "You'll be killed," Lark said. "I am a priest," he replied. "I am useful even to wicked men." Jonah squeezed his shoulder. "We'll come back when this is over." Miguel smiled. "I believe you will." Jonah and Lark rode into the night, leaving the burning glow of Salvation Ridge behind them. The desert stretched out wide and dark, coyotes cried. Wind whispered through dry brush. Lark leaned forward slightly, her hands trembling around the reins. "You shaking?" Jonah asked quietly. "Only a little." "You hide it well." She swallowed. "I'm trying." Jonah slowed his horse. "You're doing better than most men I know." Lark inhaled deeply. Jonah, I need to tell you something. Now? Yes, because if something happens to me, I need you to know. She turned in the saddle, eyes glistening in the moonlight. When you came riding toward that wagon, I thought it was the end. But then you appeared out of the dust, steady and calm. You didn't know me, you didn't ask questions, you just saved me. Jonah's jaw clenched. Anyone decent would have done the same. No, she said softly. Only a few good ones would risk their lives for someone like me. He looked at her, really looked at her. The moon lit her face, strong, determined, a woman who'd fought her way through fear and loss and danger. I didn't save you, he said. You're saving me. How? By giving me something I can believe in. Lark blinked, then reached out and laid a hand on his chest. The desert seemed to fall silent around them. Before either of them could speak again, a gunshot cracked behind them. Jonah yanked Lark down as bullets ripped through the air. Dust exploded around their horses' hooves. They tracked us! Lark cried. Ride! Jonah shouted. They raced through the dark canyon, bullets following like angry wasps. The abandoned mining camp came into view. Old shacks, broken fences, rusted machinery. Jonah pulled Lark behind an overturned ore cart as gunfire echoed off the rocks. How many? Lark asked. 3 riders. Maybe 4. She tightened her grip on the satchel. If they kill us, this ledger dies with us. Jonah checked his rifle. Then we don't die. He rose, fired 2 shots, dropped one rider clean, another dismounted and took cover behind a boulder. The third circled to flank them. Jonah grabbed Lark's hand. Stay low! Move with me! They scrambled through broken beams toward a collapsed shack. The last rider jumped from behind a wagon, revolver raised. Lark fired first. Her shot hit true. The man fell, stunned. Jonah stared at her. You didn't miss. She shook but held firm. I wasn't planning to. Silence returned to the canyon. Jonah checked the bodies. No more threats, no more gunfire. Just the quiet night. Lark exhaled shakily. Is it over? Jonah stepped close, placed his hands on her shoulders. No, he said gently. It's just beginning, but we face it together. Her eyes softened. Together? That's the only way I want it. Quote. For the first time since he'd met her, Lark smiled without fear behind it. High above them, the moon rose over the canyon, silver and steady, watching 2 people who had been running for too long finally stop, side by side. Tomorrow they would face the world again. Tonight they had each other.